Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Abeer's Book Reviews, and today I'll be reviewing this book, The Johnson & Johnson Files by Kaunain Sheriff M. The Indian Secrets of a Global Giant. Now this book is in the category of one of my favorites, which is investigative journaling. Specifically, it's about pharmaceutical investigative journaling, much like The Empire of Pain, which I read last year. But this one targets a different pharmaceutical company, which is Johnson & Johnson. And specifically, this book is about the mishandling of a certain medical implant that the company created in India. So, Johnson & Johnson, sometime in the early 2000s, came up with this particular type of hip implant called ASR. And it was this revolutionary technology which would enable a shorter recovery time, better performance, etc., etc. And there was a major flaw. That was that the implant leaked harmful metals into the body. So something in the implant would scrape against the other, and toxic metals such as chromium, lead, nickel, all of those would eventually leach into the patient's bloodstream. Now, Johnson & Johnson, the company, became aware of this for quite early on, and eventually they did have multi-billion-dollar settlements in the US and globally as well, where the affected patients first had their implants recalled. They were paid for any subsequent surgeries, any corrective measures that they had to take, etc. But this book dwells into what happened in India with the ASR implants, how for decades the patients were either not made aware of the implants and implants shortcomings, and even if they weren't compensated, how people in the United States or Australia or the United Kingdom were compensated, for example. So this book is basically a bunch of stories from Indian patients and doctors who navigated this very challenging period where there were toxic chemicals leaching into the body, and the patient was either not aware of it. If they did go to the doctor for consultation, it was just dismissed as, it's nothing. They weren't given the specific test required to measure the heavy metal toxins in the body. And once those measurements came out and the trials ensued and the companies were sued and whatnot, the hospitals had to take accountability and responsibility. It talks about the final outcomes of a bunch of these cases and how the level of compensation was extremely low and the level of oversight was extremely high, and not only for the company Johnson & Johnson, but also for the government regulators who approved the implant, the private and public medical institutions who were complacent in this entire ordeal, where they didn't inform their patients, they didn't help them out properly, so on and so forth. It's an investigative journaling piece which particularly dwells into pharmaceutical ethics, and it's extremely well written. It's extremely well researched as well. So that's one of the things I like about investigative journaling, is that when you have a lot of sources cited with proper references, that adds a lot more credibility to the work. And overall, I would say it's an amazing book for anyone who wants to, again, just as a piece of investigative journaling, read it, or maybe wants to read about the history of the pharmaceutical industry. I think this would serve as a very good case study for the different ways different demographies are treated a lot of the times when it comes to these sort of things. And it's a very vivid example because it's full of stories. It's basically an amalgam of patient stories and doctor stories and regulator stories, all into one book, extremely well researched. And that is pretty much it for the review. If I would definitely recommend everyone check this book out, because it does give you a lot of insight into how the pharmaceutical industry works, and how, even though it might not seem like it, a lot of the public and private institutions revolving around the pharmaceutical industry actually become complacent, especially in a place like India, which very famously has low trust in public authorities. They aren't credible, so on and so forth. Yeah, so here it is once again, the Johnson & Johnson files. And if you guys enjoyed this review, make sure you hit the like button. If you're new and haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel to keep receiving more videos like this one. I've been Abeer Rao, and thanks for watching.